What a way to start. All right. Well, it was bound to happen, everyone. Welcome to our inaugural episode of John/John, a new kind of horror podcast.
My name is John, and I am a huge horror fan. I love horror movies. I love all movies, but I think horror gets a bad rep. And so this is my chance to try and rectify that situation.
Right. And my name is John, and I do not like horror movies. It's not my jam. It's never been my jam. So needless to say, I'm sure y'all will have more fun with this podcast than I will.
Well, I think it's good to ask you right off the bat, what is it about horror that turns you off? What is it that you don't like being scared? Is it just you just don't dig the genre? What is it that gets you?
Yeah, I think, how do I want to say this? I don't like being scared, and there are certainly things that I can vibe with a little bit better than others. So like I love Get Out. Like I think that's a brilliant movie, and but see that I would consider is like more of like a suspense thriller. And obviously there's some other, like, there's a lot of other things with that movie. That was just an example. But yeah,
it's definitely Get Out, and we might even do a whole episode on Jordan Peele in the future. But yeah, Get Out is definitely more of the start of a new subgenre of social horror.
Right.
Which is very interesting.
But for me, a lot of those like classic, particularly slashers, when I was a kid, just kind of like ruined me. So it kind of starts from that. But it's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new year. So I'm willing to try this out. I know we've talked about doing something for a long time, and this just seems like an interesting way to kind of introduce myself to more of the genre. And yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So
well, this is we're doing an inaugural episode, and I feel like we need to do some sort of brief introduction just so people know who the hell we are.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's probably a good idea.
As said before, my name is John, and I am a movie fan. I work in the theater industry. I am a technical person. I'm a master carpenter with the American Stage Theater Company in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I've always loved movies since I was a little kid. One of my earliest memories is throwing a hiss fit because my parents wouldn't let me stay up to watch all of the Oscars one year when I was very little because I had a bedtime. Yeah, and so I watched, I think my first horror movie, or at least I classify this as horror, was The Silence of the Lambs. I watched that at far too young an age. And I just kind of got hooked on that. And for a bit, when you're a kid, nobody likes getting scared when they're a kid. Nobody likes being scared. Mm-hmm. But I just sort of grew into enjoying the thrill of it. Right. And because that feeling you get when you're about to go on a roller coaster and you have that click, 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 click right before the big drop. I love that feeling. I love roller coasters as well, if you couldn't tell. But I love that feeling.
Right. I also don't like roller coasters. So shows you about who I am. I like to know what I'm getting into, and I like to know how prepared I should be. Yeah. So my name is John, and I too am a theater artist in the area. That's actually how we met, and we just kind of we learned quickly about one another that we were both big fans of movies. Some of you may be directed here from my other channel. I do a Perez Periódico, which is kind of another movie centric or entertainment centric sort of
super fun.
Thanks, man. And that focuses a lot on like fandoms and just various other entertainment aspects in theater and film and music, but through the lens of BIPOC fans, just kind of highlighting those voices. So I've never been a huge fan. I'll tell you what. I don't know why these two movies are sticking out. Well, one of them is not even a movie. Are sticking out to me that just traumatized me as a kid. The first horror movie I remember watching. I don't know why I was there. Maybe I was trying to hang out with my mom and she just happened to be watching a movie. I don't remember. I remember seeing, I believe it was Halloween 4. And it was Halloween 4 or 5. One of the bad. It's not even one of the good ones. It's one of the bad ones, and it just Michael Myers freaked me out. And the other, you're gonna love this. The other horror movie, it's not a movie, that freaked me out as a kid was Michael Jackson's Thriller. Listen, seeing him turn into that big fucking werewolf cat thing freaked me out. So. Yeah, I love the song, but even now, sometimes when I try and watch the video, I still like go back to how I felt as a kid and like, so.
It was a year or two ago. I think it was 2019. They re-released Thriller in the theaters as like part of a preview or like the short before another horror film. I can't remember what it was connected to, but so I got to see Thriller on the big screen. It was like on an IMAX screen.
That's probably cool.
That was really, really fun. That was really neat.
But yeah, that was terrifying. I just remember one of like the zombies had like black shit dripping out his mouth. I'm like, man, I don't like this.
Oh yeah.
But all that to say, I do from time to time find myself enjoying, a movie or something from the genre, or you appreciating when something else outside of the genre uses those elements. So I don't think I'm quite. It's not my first go-to, but that's why I'm trying to expose myself a little more to it.
Sure.
And and that brings us to, I think, a really great way to kind of get into the genre is actually with this particular franchise we're going to be talking about today. So yeah,
I frequently direct people towards this franchise whenever they are skeptical at first,
right,
of horror and slashers in particular. I always say, watch Scream,
right?
Watch the first Scream because it's nothing like any slasher you're thinking of,
right?
Well, it is, but in the best way possible.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, for those who, if you click this video or you click this podcast, you know what we're talking about. We're talking about the Scream franchise today, starting from, we're kind of celebrating the release of the new Scream. So we went back and watched Scream 1 through 4. Most of them, I don't even think I had seen Scream 3, but I haven't seen Scream 4 since 2011, and I think it's been like 20 years since I watched the other ones, and I don't even know that I finished watching them, to be honest, because I was a kid when they came out. So, but yeah, so let's just jump right into to the first entry of the movie. So Scream came out in 1996, directed by horror icon Wes Craven, with the screenplay by Kevin Williamson. Didn't know he was the creator of Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
So wild.
But you can see it when you watch this movie. You can see the soap opera-iness of this franchise is 10,000% just spectacular.
And he also did the I Know What You Did Last Summer, another 90s early aughts slasher. Music by Marco Beltrami, with a cast that boasts Nev Campbell, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, Jamie Kennedy, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, with Drew Barrymore as Casey Becker and Roger L. Jackson as the voice of Ghostface. Some other interesting, and we can talk about this a little bit. Some other interesting casting that I had no idea. I didn't know Henry Winkler was going to pop up in this fucking movie.
Yeah.
Liev Schreiber as Cotton Weary, but only on TV. He doesn't have any lines in this one.
He doesn't show up in person until 2.
Yeah, and
which is so bonkers to think that they got Liev Schreiber to do this. Like, this bit background thing.
And Wes Craven himself cameos as Fred the janitor in a on-the-nose reference to Freddy Krueger. Another one of his twisted successes. Just kind of my general reaction to it. This movie is fucking good. It just the combination of the suspense slasher, kind of horror feel with the meta-ness of this movie. It's very witty and very self-aware, but not to the point where it's like a parody. Mm-hmm. It's just and it's really like, even as someone who's not familiar, it really is like a love letter to the slasher genre. Everything that came before it.
Yeah, it's a brilliant example of horror comedy, I think. Right. It's got a great sense of wit and a great sense of scare. Like, you can see Wes Craven's brilliant eye for creating a scene with tension and proper use of jump scare and all that. But it's blended really nicely with Kevin Williamson's sense of, for lack of a better word, wit. It's so funny and so on the nose with its commentary on the slasher genre. Which I think is the reason why I do recommend it first for a lot of people, because it breaks down every slasher film you're going to watch after this.
Totally.
It's so special in that regard, especially because you have one of the greatest slasher films of all time, Halloween, so prevalent in the background throughout the whole thing. And once you know the rules, quote unquote, of a horror film, it's really fascinating to go back and watch, especially 80s era horror slasher films.
Right. And
recognize what the hell is happening. And it's so funny.
Yeah, well, that's something I noticed about it. It plays what works. What the movie doesn't work if it doesn't both play into the tropes, but then also defy them when it needs to.
Yes.
But we'll get into a little later. I mean, the movie's been out for a long time, so no, I'm not really worried about any spoilers. But even, toward the end there, it subverts expectations by going back to what you expected from the beginning. At least for me.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I just want to talk a little bit about that opening scene.
Oh, yes. Yes.
My God. Like, I remember, I remember like the highlights of that scene. I remember, I remember how they find her. That was really most of what I remembered. But, oh my God. That scene was just haunting. That was scary. That might be the scariest part.
Genuinely
of the movie.
Terrifying. Yeah. No, it truly is. And it's so well done. And you can only imagine watching it in 1996, opening night. Drew Barrymore is front and center on all the posters. She is being billed as top billing Drew Barrymore, and she is the biggest name in the cast. She's everywhere. And then they kill her right off the bat, and it's so brilliant. And you just, oh my goodness. The fun story about that, Drew Barrymore originally signed on to do Sidney Prescott. She was supposed to be the lead. And then something happened with her schedule where she couldn't make that work anymore, but she still really wanted to be a part of it because she loved the script so much. And so she went to Wes Craven and said, why don't I be the girl in the beginning? Why don't you kill me off? That'd be really fun, right? And Wes went, yes, that's brilliant. That's amazing. And the rest is history. But just...
Yeah, I remember I was reading a little bit about this movie just because, especially that scene, just it stuck out to me so much. And hearing that she did sign on to play Sydney, but then, couldn't do it. And a big part of why Wes Craven signed on to do this movie was because Drew Barrymore was interested. And, these movies, even now, I would say a little less now than back then. But even now, these movies don't always draw big name actors.
Oh no. Yeah, absolutely. Horror movies traditionally are where a lot of actors get their start. You hire unknowns because they're cheap. And most horror films, as we will discover throughout this podcast, have no budget. Most horror movies, unless the studio sees that it's a viable franchise that they can capitalize on, horror movies have next to zero budget. And so, and Wes Craven was worried not only that this was going to just be another slasher or whatever, but he was scared that he was getting stuck in this genre. He wanted to try and do something different. He wanted to try and do something new, something creative for himself. And so he sees that Drew Barrymore signed on because she read the script and loved it. And he said, yeah, absolutely. I think this might be something different if somebody of Drew Barrymore's caliber is signing on to this.
Yeah, and you had and some of these other names, even though, they're much bigger now than they were then, but even, Nev Campbell, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard were, finding, Courtney Cox, were finding big success in the 90s. So, yeah, it was just an interesting, it was just an interesting route to go. But more on this opening scene itself. Just the idea of living in a small town. I grew up I'm originally from New York. I'm from the Bronx, but I grew up in Port Orange, Florida. And the idea of living in a small town and something this insane happens is just terrifying. But being alone and at first, it kind of starts off innocent. It kind of starts off, they're almost flirting on the phone until they're not. And then shit just hits the fan. This was genuinely a terrifying scene. And it's so heartbreaking when the scene ends because, just her mom's on the phone and hears her and just...
It's devastating. It's so devastating. And the music swells, and it's it's so incredibly well done and amazingly well crafted.
Yeah. This is my first time rewatching that scene in its entirety, like I said, in about 20 years. So seeing that was just holy shit. And it's it just gets... Just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. Seeing her boyfriend strapped to the chair and his fucking entrails are out. It was just insane. And I think you hit it on the head before. This movie has the right amount of jump scares and tension to kind of keep you on your you're never really relaxed watching this movie, even when things are funny. You're never really relaxed.
No, absolutely not. The whole time you're on the edge of your seat. You're waiting for the next thing to occur, the next scare. It's so just well done on that front, and and a big part of that is the Ghostface shows up pretty consistently throughout the movie. They keep reminding you consistently, this guy is a ever-present threat.
Right.
Anybody can go at any time. This guy is going to get this cast.
Right.
or guys, as we learn at the end of the film.
Right.
But yeah, the line. I remember in high school I was talking to somebody, a friend who also was not into horror movies, and I was like, "Oh, but you got to watch Scream." And they said, "No, I don't think that this is it's not my thing." And I went, "Let me describe to you the opening scene." And so I'm going through and I'm describing the scene to them, and they're listening and everything. And I get to the line where it's, "Why do you want to know my name?" "Because I want to know who I'm looking at." And just the drop at that. And I remember my friend, just me talking to them, telling them this scene, tensed up in their seat and went, "Oh," right. Like, it's so good. Yeah. It's so good.
And then we kind of learn a lot more of the backstory, with Sydney and Sydney's mom. We'll get to her later, later in this franchise. But yeah, I love the core cast. It's just funny because, I know this is intentional, but Skeet Ulrich was just giving all the Johnny Depp vibes that he could.
Yes,
in this movie, because he was Nightmare on Elm Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, he was just giving all the vibes he could. He was incredibly horny this entire movie.
Oh my god! What a just horn dog! Just constantly going after Sydney. It's just gross.
My favorite scene with him. Well, it's not my favorite scene, but one of my favorite scenes with him is the day after he got arrested, and he's just like, "Hey, your mom died. You gotta let it go." And basically, he's like, "You gotta let me have sex with you." And it's like,
I know.
Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
It's so weird. It's so gross.
I was like, my God. And then he does the stupid. I'm glad they parodied that moment in the second movie, because that was fucking funny.
Absolutely.
And so, you probably know this more than I do, but I thought it was a pretty straightforward. His name, that's a nod to Halloween, right? Billy Loomis?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Loomis.
Yeah.
The psychiatrist who diagnoses Michael Myers.
Right. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't making that up in my own headcanon.
No.
So one thing the kills in this movie are insane. They're very creative. One of the ones that stick out to me is the death by garage.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, that shit is terrifying, because she was in a house full of people.
Full of people, and nobody happened to be walking by the garage at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
And another in the same, that whole second hour of the movie where they're at the party is so well done.
The entire third act of this film at the party at the house is just non-stop from beginning to end. As soon as they enter to when they roll credits, is just pure adrenaline. It's so good.
One of the scariest moments of the whole movie is Gail Weathers and her cameraman watching from the van and knowing
the 30-second delay. The 30-second delay is so good.
That got me. That scared the ever-loving shit out of me. When they finally open the door and the cameraman just gets fucking got. Because I forgot about the delay. I was like, I was just in my seat. But yeah, a lot of these kills were very creative for their time, and when we finally learn who the killer is, or the killers, it's like, yeah, I was suspicious of fucking Billy when he got arrested, but they subvert it. They're like, nope, couldn't have been him. And then all of a sudden,
the use of red herrings in this is great. And that's the other big thing about this movie that I absolutely love, is this is a Agatha Christie-esque murder mystery
Right.
wrapped in a slasher film.
Right.
And I love murder mysteries.
Right.
And so, like, this movie, like, checks off all kinds of boxes for me. And, yeah, I love that they use a lot of red herrings. They subvert expectations. They, try and get you to constantly be guessing who it could be.
Because we saw Billy get stabbed.
You see Billy get stabbed, Billy gets arrested, and then Sydney gets a phone call from the killer, which, means obviously he couldn't have done it because he was in jail, quote unquote. But of course, his one phone call, so good.
Yeah.
And then it's revealed that it's not just one guy, it's been two this whole time, is so wonderfully brilliant. It's so well done because you suddenly... I love when a murder mystery reveals it and suddenly everything clicks into place. And you go, oh, my God, that makes perfect sense.
Right.
I love when a mystery does that.
Yeah, I fully thought... I mean, while I was watching the movie, in my subconscious, I knew that she wasn't going to die because I've seen the trailer for the new one. But when Gail crashes her van... I'm thinking like, okay, opening night, like, holy shit, you just saw someone else, like, from the main cast just done. Or when Dewey is stabbed.
You just watched Monica from Friends get murdered.
Yeah. And before I get back to Gail, I want to shine a little light on Deputy Dewey.
Deputy Dewey,
the real MVP of these movies. I just love David Arquette in this movie. He's
great.
It's funny because Kendra, my partner, she came and watched the second half of the movie. I think she heard how much fun I was having watching the first half, so she came and joined for the second half. And she didn't watch the whole first like hour and change of the movie. Mm-hmm. And so she sees Deputy Dewey walking with Gail, and they're talking, and she leans to me and goes, "I don't know anything about this man, but I can tell you he's a himbo." And then he said something stupid, and I was like, "Yeah, you're kind of right."
Right on the money.
But yeah, he's so funny in these, and he's so, for as goofy as he is incredibly brave, and I'm glad that these movies never use him as a straight up punchline.
No, yeah, I completely agree. He may not be the brightest bulb in the bunch,
right?
But that doesn't mean that he's not good at his job. And like he doesn't try. That's the thing. He's always there. The scene in the bedroom after the killer calls Sydney when she's at her friend's house, right, and Dewey's there. He comes in gun ready and he picks up the phone and he's, hello. Right. It's very silly, but I think that truly highlights that Dewey is ready to do whatever it takes. He is going to be there for her.
Right.
And I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely. And then we get the Stu and Billy, just this moment they have in the kitchen with Sydney is absolutely insane. It's also very funny because Matthew Lillard can't help it. He's fucking hilarious, and no matter what he's doing. That,
which I love that they play that up, though. I love that he's able to be as zany as Matthew Lillard just naturally is, right, and they just play that into, oh no, this guy's just off his rocker. Like, this guy's just insane.
Right. And because I was reading, and something fascinating they do in this movie, which I noticed when I was watching it, but when I going back and reading it, it kind of like solidified, is that so apparently the producers we're kind of split down the middle on whether they wanted the killer to have a motive or whether they wanted them to just be like psycho. And so having two killers, they got to do both, where Stu was just kind of a Looney Tune, and Billy had more of a deep-rooted issue that he was very maniacally working through.
Yeah.
So I thought that was super interesting, but it was one of my favorite lines when Sydney's like, what the fuck are you going to say is your motive? And he goes, peer pressure. Stu's just bleeding out, saying he's gonna blame it on peer pressure. Also, them stabbing each other is just like, you guys are fucking nuts.
Just absolute insanity. Yeah,
I'm getting a little woozy here. Such a great line. And then, Wes Craven, with this movie in particular, with this franchise in particular, really leans into something that we see a lot now, but was rare then, is the heroic female protagonist in a horror movie.
Yeah.
And so not only is, Sydney, actively fighting back, making more of the right moves that people should make in horror movies, but fucking Gale comes in and saves the day.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah,
there are some really strong female characters throughout this entire franchise, which I love for a horror movie. Because all too often, you have the stereotype of the woman who, like Sydney says in the movie, you have some big-breasted girl who's running up the stairs when she should be running out the door.
Right.
And that's absolutely true.
Right.
So I love that Wes was fully aware of that, and Kevin Williamson was fully aware of that, and they made some really strong female presences in this film.
Right. Before we kind of wrap up with our final thoughts, I want to talk about our symbolic killer, Ghostface. Man, this this motherfucker takes a beating in every movie.
I love that. And I
too.
absolutely love that about this franchise. The fact that this killer is not Michael Myers, he's not Jason Voorhees, he's not Freddy Krueger, who are, these immortal, beings more than human.
Right.
No, this guy's just a dude. Ghostface is just a dude. And so he's gonna take a beating, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
To a certain point, it makes it scarier. Like, it truly makes it a little scarier that this is just some rando who's gonna get you. Like, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So when Kendra was tuning in, she found herself in this weird position. She was like, I kind of like this guy. He's funny because he keeps getting his ass kicked. Whether it's he's getting beer bottles thrown at him, or he, someone hits him with a vase and he falls, or,
trips over the couch. All sorts of shit.
Right. But at the same time, it makes you believe, like, oh, maybe the person who he's after could get away. Mm-hmm. Which makes it all the scarier when they don't, because
when they just don't.
It just takes one bad move, and then you're gone from this fucking guy.
Which again is such a wonderful subversion of the rules and the standards of classic 80s slashers, where you have these heroes who are making good choices for the most part, and it's not that they make a dumb choice; it's that they make a honest mistake, and that's what gets them. Right. Is just a really nice subversion of expectations.
Right. So kind of wrapping up, our like just kind of saying our final thoughts. Yeah, this movie is just a genuinely good movie. I found myself being quite scared, but also I think the infusion of like that black comedy in there helped me kind of find the moments I could enjoy and did enjoy. So overall, just this was a solid way to kind of restart my journey into the genre, if you will.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you loved it as much as you did. What would you say is was the scariest? I think we kind of already touched on this, but what was the scariest moment for you in this film?
Yeah. So I mean, I have three moments in particular that kind of stick out to me. Number one, bar none, is just the opening scene with Drew Barrymore. Just because, I mean, the rest of the movie, they kind of infuse like that 90s teen comedy aspect of it, which I really, really love, because I love movies like She's All That and what's the other one? There's a million of them. But the scene where they're watching from the van was terrifying. Yes. And then a scene I really, really enjoy and I think about is the bathroom scene. where Sydney's in the bathroom and fucking Ghostface pops out of one of the stalls.
Oh yes, yeah.
Because that's the one moment in the movie where I'm like, did that actually just happen, or is she like going kind of crazy there? Yeah, so that's just the moment. I don't know why that moment stuck out to me so much. Just like, because you wouldn't have fucking known otherwise. Like, I was just in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that that scene did its job well, because I think it's supposed to make you, the audience, unsure yourselves of like, oh no, like what is even happening? Like what could be going on at this point?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, overall, I would say in terms of genuine like scariness, scarameter, if you will.
How many ghost faces are you giving this one on a scare meter?
How many?
1 to 5.
1 to 5. See, on the standpoint of like how much I just enjoyed it, I'd give it a 5 out of 5 ghost faces. But in terms of how like scared I was, I'd probably give it a 4 in terms of spooks.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
It has just enough comedy to where I can still sit there and just be like not freaked out by it. Well, not all the time anyway. There's those after watching one of these movies, we went to go fill our some fluid in our cars, and it happened to be like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and I was like, do we want to really go out there right now? So it did affect me as an actual human person.
Were there any points in this that you that tried to be scary but just weren't scary for you? Was there anything that jumps out at you like that?
No. I think particularly Scream 1 understood the assignment and did it well. So there was nothing in this one. A moment I did enjoy. I mean, we could do an entire episode just on this and the history behind it. But like the Henry Winkler killing was kind of crazy, and I love my favorite bit of just self-referential comedy in this is when Randy is watching Halloween by himself, and he's like, "Turn around, Jamie," and it's like, so that was really really clever, and was for sure he was gonna die there, and then he didn't. So, but yeah, overall, I just did a solid good movie.
Yay!
Yeah.
Good. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
And and luckily it didn't have to wait very long for a sequel, so I think we can hop right into Scream 2.
Scream 2.
Also direct.
This is a very interesting entry. I'm going to open up with that being my opening thought. This one's very interesting.
See, I would have applied that to the third one, but
I also think the third one is interesting, but in a less good tone. This one is still in a good tone when I say interesting. 3 is just interesting.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about then. So Scream 2 is also directed by Wes Craven with the screenplay by Kevin Williamson. A lot of the same returning cast. We've got Nev Campbell, David Arquette, Courtney Cox. And then we have some new additions. We've got Elise Neal, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jamie Kennedy comes back, Timothy Olyphant, Jerry O'Connell, Laura Metcalf, and Roger L. Stone returning as the voice of Ghostface. So there's some additional cast, and we have to talk about it right now because it's so funny. This first one is a continuation of a joke from the first movie, where they're talking about, oh, if our life was a horror movie, blah blah blah, and Sydney was like, yeah, knowing my luck, they'd get someone like Tori Spelling. And in the Stab movie, within this movie, who do they get to play Sidney Prescott but Tori Spelling? That was just so funny.
A brilliant meta joke.
And you'd really have to, because I watched them back to back, like, you really have had to have just realized that they said that So that's an easy one to forget if you were someone who waited a whole year, who had to wait a whole year to see this movie. Luke Wilson as Billy Loomis in Stab, Heather Graham as Casey Becker, and then this movie also we had Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett Smith, particularly in the opening scene. So kind of continuing with the theme of the first one, the opening scene in this is like, it's what I love about this is that it's very clever. It sort of makes social commentary, but it's also just like genuinely scary.
Yeah, I love the opening to Scream 2. I think the opening is definitely the highest point in this film. Not to say that I don't like parts of it moving forward, but the opening is definitely the standout moment for me. It's really well done, very creepy,
right,
and surprising, and it's surprising while still playing on what we were expecting from the first film, where we know from the first film that the opening somebody's going to die. It's going to be, the big name actor is going to go.
Right. And the movie starts, poking fun, that especially particularly in through the lens of BIPOC people. A lot of these horror movies is just kind of white people doing white nonsense. Getting themselves into trouble that they don't need to get themselves into. And and so I love that this movie is kind of poking fun at it. But then we see, so one moment in this scene though that it just aggravated me, and I mean I think it's what it was supposed to do, was how everyone in this fucking theater, they're dressed like the killer, they're pretending to stab each other, they're throwing popcorn, they're screaming, they're shouting, there's shit flying in the air. And the one moment that Jada Pinkett Smith is like yelling at the screen, people, like, everyone turns around her and is like, I'm like, why is that the thing that y'all are annoyed with?
Yeah, everybody shushes her at that point. It's which I've been to quite a few opening nights in my day. I loved going to opening nights for movies. Like, I went to the Harry Potter opening nights all the time. And there's costumes, there's little events and things. It's really fun. They're really great. Never in all my years have I seen an opening night where people are actively running around, throwing popcorn, and like stabbing at each other, screaming throughout the theater.
Right.
That's just disruptive.
That's like a Rocky Horror situation. And
that's exactly what that is.
And I'm like, for opening night for this, man, what are y'all doing? What are we doing here? But then just seeing how, Omar Epps gets stabbed in the fucking head. Jesus. And then how Jada Pinkett Smith, everyone thought it was a promotional stunt from the studio, and she just dies in front of all these people. It was a pretty powerful scene.
Really, really powerful. I do love the opening scene of this film.
Yeah. So just kind of speaking on our general thoughts of the movie, I think it was a solid sequel. Just,
I agree.
As far as sequels go.
I think unfortunately, it's said in the film that sequels by definition are inferior to the original.
Right.
And that's just always going to be the case. It's rare that you have a sequel that is on par or better than the original.
Right. And they did mention,
they highlight they highlight a few in the film class scene. Right. Godfather, Terminator, Alien. Right. But this, unfortunately, is not one of those films that I think is on par or better than the original.
I appreciate that these movies, just in general, it's not only for people who love this genre, but for people who just love movies. I love that everyone in these movies are just experts on film, like talking about ratings and also it's just a little bit of inside humor that I appreciate. yeah, that's I wrote something similar here about how they're remaining meta. I think they knew that what they had was so special that they weren't going to top it. And some of it was even I've noticed was kind of inspired by some real life controversy of the original Scream.
Absolutely.
It's interesting how those controversies kind of play, like how those influence the movies. Because for those who don't know, who just a little backstory. And John, please jump in if I'm missing anything. But there's like a lot of copycat, not a lot, but there's several copycat crimes. And there was a lot of attempts to blame violence in movies. And
a big one at the time was Columbine.
Yeah, I saw that really affected Scream 3. But yeah, just a lot of these crimes, like around the time were just kind of, and they were all using Scream as an example, as like the example.
And I think they used Scream as the example because of how meta it is.
Right.
And so because it's self-aware, it should have known better than to be so violent. And it's like, but you're missing the whole point then if you're doing that.
Right. And yeah, I think, I like a lot of the, it's just, I like this movie. I like it. I didn't love it like I did the first one. I wrote here again, Ghostface takes a beating as he's going to do. Oh, one of my favorite, I do genuinely love the cell phone scene, where Randy gets got, because I wasn't expecting him to die in this movie. Apparently nobody was. But I do like that scene of them kind of trying to find the killer while he's on the phone.
I think that's probably the best scene of tension in this movie.
Right.
I think that's very well done, really creative. That and the scene where Sydney's on stage and they're rehearsing.
That's just what I was going to talk about
next.
That
scene was very, very well done. That scene was extremely well done. The rest of the movie and the rest of the scenes with Ghostface, they're good. They're fine. Yeah. I'm not going to say that any of them are poorly done, but they're not as surprising. They're not as well. I don't want to say not as well executed, but they just feel like I've seen them before.
Right.
And so I knew, for a franchise where the first film was all about the surprise and breaking the rules, or do you play the rule, playing off of those things, this movie follows the rules pretty straightforward all the way through.
Right.
And that was a little disappointing.
Right. So like, because I'm thinking of the kills in this, I'm thinking of like Sarah Michelle Gellar, a fine scene, a fine killing, if you will. It feels weird to say. But yeah, it just wasn't anything that like, that you wouldn't have seen in another movie. I do enjoy I did like the scene where Gail is in the school and she's running through like the soundproof like room and stuff like that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I like that scene. Fucking Deputy Dewey, man. You can't kill this fucking guy. This motherfucker should have been killed twice now, and he just can't die.
You can't kill any of the big three, as I started calling them.
Right.
Like
we'll find out in the new one
we'll
tomorrow.
See.
Let's find out. But yeah. I'm trying to think of I was also going to bring up that scene where she's rehearsing. So I didn't realize there was going to be a subplot where Sydney is majoring in theater and she wants to be an actress. And they spend a lot of the movie in a theater. And I was like, I'm so excited to talk to you specifically about just the environment. That rehearsal scene, I don't know what buck wild Greek play they were doing. But yeah, it was a good way
I was watching it with Alexa, and we were trying to figure that out because we were like, what the hell show is this? And so we looked up Greek tragedy with Cassandra as the lead because like that was the only thing we had to go on. and I think we discovered it's Agamemnon
Oh.
was the show that they were doing.
Okay.
But yeah.
I was just like, the first thing I thought, I was like, man, what kind of college are you going to where y'all have all these effects and people working and like what?
The giant thunder sheets?
Yeah.
Like, it was like, wow.
Like,
okay.
What kind of budget do y'all have? But it was a very creative way to hide Ghostface and kind of play up Sydney's PTSD, because there's another moment of like, wait, was that motherfucker actually there? Was he not? What's going on? So I thought that was a fun moment of tension in the movie. And then the Buck Wild reveal that it was the creepy film dude who like kind of expected that. Mm-hmm. That was another one. But then bringing in Billy's mom, I was like, yeah, that's an interesting route to go.
I liked it for the semi-referential nature that it is.
Right.
That because Friday the 13th, to those of you who don't know, Jason Voorhees' mom is actually the killer in the first Friday the 13th, right. Before they introduced Jason. And so I kind of liked that for what that was, and it made sense towards the plot. Like, you know, I could see it. But like I said in the first Scream, when we were talking about that, I love when a mystery, when it's revealed, if I haven't already solved the mystery, I love when it clicks everything into place and you go, oh, that makes so much sense. How did I not see that?
Right.
So it bugs me when a mystery has this big reveal and you kind of go, oh, okay, sure. Like, I get, okay. Like, it makes sense, but
right.
Meh. Like, I didn't, how could I have solved that?
Right. Because there was no mention or reference. Anyway, this movie just had a lot going on, because it was also kind of like, oh, they're recreating the people who got killed in the first round of murders, by using like the last names or first names, things like that.
Yeah,
could have been.
And then they drop that plot very quickly. Yeah. As soon as they figure that out, that is just dropped, and we're back to killing in whatever random order.
Right.
But
so yeah, that was just could have been interesting. Then they just didn't do anything with that. But I love the idea. My favorite part of this movie is the idea of death by theater. Just this whole insane sequence where Sydney is facing the killers, and she's cutting down ropes and set pieces are falling, and I'm just like, what is this movie? I don't know. But the idea of them using all these like set pieces and props and stuff to, like, there's all those big fake bricks, which look fucking heavy. I'm like, you drop them from the.
Yeah. As somebody who actively works in technical theater, I need to know what the hell those bricks were made out of, because that is a hazard. You can't just have, like, foam still hurts if it hits you, and it's like a hefty piece of foam.
Right.
Like, you can't just.
Those didn't look like stone, but they look like rubber, and I'm like, you can kill someone with that. Yeah, I was just like, I don't know what this school is. I don't know what is going on. That's all I could think about was during the whole final moments of the movie. Again, I appreciate Deputy Dewey in this movie. Poor guy can't catch a break, but until he does. So this one was kind of it was a fine sequel. This is kind of wrapping up my final thoughts here.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, unless there's anything else you wanted to add to our experience.
No, I think we really did hit all the main point. And I think that's the thing that's most depressing about Scream 2 is that ultimately it's pretty forgettable. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's the biggest crime a movie can commit, is just being forgettable.
Right.
Like, I love, obviously, great movies are ones you remember, but even really crappy movies, even the dregs, the shit, are at least memorable,
right?
And at least you kind of go, oh my god, remember that scene? What the hell was that?
Right.
So it bums me out that this one's so just sort of like, oh yeah, I guess that happened. But like we said, the opening scene still really well done,
right?
And I think that there are some solid moments, but ultimately it's fine.
Like the moment with the car where he steals a car and then crashes it, and they have to like climb over him to get out.
That was pretty good.
All the black people in this movie died because of white nonsense. I noticed, and I was like, man.
I love that the cameraman got his ass out of there.
I know
that was good.
He was like, he goes, I've seen this movie. I'm not sticking around. Yeah, that was hilarious. I appreciate. He's my saving grace of this movie. But yeah,
was there any? What was the scariest point for you? Like, was there a point in this that got you, that scared you, or was this one ultimately pretty meh?
No, I mean, I definitely know there were moments that I jumped, that some of the jump scares were used effectively for me, because again, I'm not, I'm a chicken when it comes to these movies. So, but I would think in terms of, I don't know, I would say again, the opening scene was probably the scariest. I think, it was probably overall kind of the same. I'm trying. It's like you mentioned. It's hard for me to remember everything that happened in that movie. So I know there were moments that kind of scared me, but the only one that can really stand out is the opening scene in the movie theater. Yeah.
Okay.
So
how many ghost faces we given this one? Because in terms of scariness, I'm going maybe 2 out of 5.
Yeah.
2.5.
Yeah. Out of scariness, I'd give it 2.5 ghost faces. Out of how much I enjoyed it, I'd probably give it 2.5 as well. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. Maybe 3.
I'd bump it to 3.5. I think that there's enough here that to enjoy, especially from a commentary standpoint.
Right. I go 3.
That I can grasp it and dig it, but yeah, it's definitely a slope down from the first one.
Yeah, I think 3 sounds good. I don't know that we'll be saying that next with our next entry here. All right, so our next entry here is Scream 3. I think this came out in 2000.
Yes.
Directed by Wes Craven. Screenplay not by Kevin Williamson. It's by Aaron Kruger. Aaron Kruger?
I think so.
And
sorely missed Kevin Williamson on this one.
Yes. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But let's kind of go. This was an experience, y'all. So the cast is returning our big 3: Neve Campbell, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, with the addition of Patrick Dempsey, Scott Foley, Lance Henriksen, Jenny McCarthy, Emily Mortimer, Parker Posey, and Roger L. Jackson returning as the voice of Ghostface. Some of the additional cast and cameos. Jamie Kennedy found his way back in this fucking movie. We'll talk about that. Patrick Warburton, Carrie Fisher, Liev Schreiber as... We didn't even talk about Cotton in the second movie, but he was there a bunch. Liev Schreiber returning as Cotton Weary. Lynn McCree as Maureen Prescott. And I'm sorry, the first thing we have to talk about is this last cameo from Jay and Silent Bob. As Jay and Silent Bob.
I'm just electing to ignore that occurred, because that implies that Scream takes place in the Clerks universe.
That's the first question I asked. That's what I wrote. That's what I wrote here. Like, I know it's meant to be...
I'm just gonna...
I know it's meant to be fun. Like a fun little, like, let's put all of our IPs in this fucking movie, and they're in Hollywood and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I'm like... I think it's called the View Askew-niverse. And
yeah,
I'm like, does Scream is Scream part of that? What the fuck is going on?
Yeah. And maybe this is Marvel training us to just assume if you see a character, then they're obviously in that same universe. And this is, we can just sort of ignore that and just have it be just, oh no, that was just harmless fun. It was just a fun little bit.
Right.
But I don't know, man.
But it's not even that they were like, Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith in there, getting ready to shoot or whatever. They were Jay and Silent Bob.
They say, Silent Bob, look at that. It's Gail Weathers. And it's like, no.
He doesn't even call her Gail Weathers. He calls her Connie Chung.
That's right. He does. Oh, my God.
It was just such an insane moment in the whole... Like, it kind of took me out for a bit. Because I'm like... I'm just in here thinking about what the implications of that are.
It was really hard for me to recover after that bit. I completely agree.
But anyway, so I'm sorry. I just had, Jay and Silent Bob are canonically in the Scream universe, and I mean they're really not anymore. But we'll touch on why in just a second. So, this movie exists.
That is perfectly fair. I will say, I want to get the positives out of the way right up front,
right.
Because I will give it this much credit that it is a scathing indictment of the studio system in Hollywood.
Yes.
And I loved that.
Right.
I absolutely loved the... especially when you realize that Harvey Weinstein produced this thing.
Yeah.
Like, he's just incredibly baffling.
He's kind of the bad guy of the movie.
He really is. No, he really is. And it's so wild that that Wes Craven got away with doing that. And, having all of this in it. Because, I absolutely love that this whole thing is predicated. The whole franchise, in essence, is predicated on the fact that Sydney's mom was sexually assaulted by a studio executive.
Yeah.
And that's why this whole thing happened.
Right.
That is wild to me.
Yeah.
And I love that much of this film.
I think the intention of the movie is fine. And I mean, I think, I just think that the overall writing of it is kind of what drug it down, because I mean, there was also some real life shit happening. So like Columbine was a big thing that influenced this movie.
Yep.
They wanted to kind of take it out of a small town and out of, simply students of a school being targeted because of the tragedy of Columbine. So
obviously.
Yeah. So like the movie had, they had to make some extreme changes to their original script. But I think leaning too far from a writing standpoint into the slut shaming of this woman who's been dead for 3 movies. It kind of takes it, the statement that they are trying to make with all the valid points you just brought up are kind of watered down, because when it's all said and done, they're still focusing a lot of that blame on Maureen Prescott. For me, at least, that's kind of how I.
No, I completely agree. Completely agree. There's a level of I don't want to say sexism, but there's certainly a level of
misogyny.
Misogyny, for sure. That it's still the mom's fault that all this happened.
Right.
And it's like, but I guess to that point though, because that's just the killer's motivation.
Right.
I don't know that we can, Sydney has come to terms with the fact that her mom cheated on her dad, and that's like her own thing.
Right.
And her own journey that she goes on. And I think that the killer is the one making he's stuck in the past, and he's stuck in the idea that no, my mom's the reason why all of this happened.
Right. Right. So for me, just kind of going back just a little bit to like just the movie as a whole, it's not even that I think this movie is outright bad as much as I think it's kind of dumb.
Absolutely. No, there's certainly a goofy tone to this whole thing. That's the best way. I think the tone of wit is gone, and
Right.
instead of witty comedy, it's just goofy. Like, it's just odd.
And it starts with the voice modulator for me. So how the killer can now just
Mimic anybody's voice.
I'm like, do you realize how how many wars you could have started with this thing? Not that I want them to do that, but I'm just saying, like if you have this sort of technology in 2000, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I was just, that was just insane to me. Some of the casting decisions in this, like Patrick Dempsey, like, I mean, he's fine actor. Didn't really see. I don't know. It was a weird, that was a weird choice for a red herring, because he was acting very suspicious the entire movie until he wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, they never explained why he was being fucking weird.
Yeah.
Ghostface took a beating in this, but you know what? Even more than taking a beating, this Ghostface was fucking people up.
Yeah, no, he hit a lot of people real fucking hard, and
He punched someone through a window.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Absolutely.
I thought it was so funny.
Absolutely. That was wild. I think that it's I think the way I wrote it in my review is this whole thing feels like an R-rated Scooby-Doo episode.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I half expected there to be a banana peel halfway through. You know? Like, I don't... There was so much of it that was just like... Why make that choice?
Yeah. And there was some shit that I liked. Like, I liked when Jenny McCarthy, is trying to hide. And she makes the brilliant decision to hide in all the costumes. The Ghostface costumes, but then
oh my God.
But then he steps out, and I'm like, that's a good place to hide. But
it's a brilliant place to hide, which makes it a dumb place for her to hide.
Yeah.
Like, come on, lady.
Yeah. So there was that. Yeah, it's just overall the biggest sin of this movie for me, and I think there's enough goofiness of this movie that I don't even know that. I mean, unless there's something you really, really want to touch on. But I think we kind of touched on the main points of, like, what the movie intended and what it actually did. For me, I think the big thing in terms of the story we ended up getting was the reveal of Roman as Sydney's brother.
Half brother.
Half brother, I'm sorry.
No, it's just they make a point of saying that. It's just yeah.
And
I completely agree. Weird choice.
Just because the idea, and like they tell you again, they tell you by way of Randy, who is survived by his sister on this tape that no one knew about until they needed to, because they just really wanted Jamie Kennedy back.
Yep.
And no issues with him. He was fine in these movies. But just the idea of quite literally just going with the trope of, like, I've been controlling it from the beginning. I don't know. It just...
Yeah, despise that. I absolutely hate that. And I completely agree. Because, again, it's one of those things where, as a fan of mysteries, if you reveal the killer, if you have your big reveal, and I could not have solved it on my own, and, like, I couldn't have figured out why and what, it bugs me.
Right.
And I don't know, a reveal that, oh, sure, it was her, it was Roman for whatever reason, that's fine. I sure. But the motive of, oh, it's because he's her brother is weird. It's unnecessary.
Right.
And yeah, the puppet master just unnecessary. It's just odd.
Yeah.
And maybe maybe it was all meant to be part of this whole commentary on trilogies and film franchises and all that. And and that's fine if it was, but then make it part of that commentary.
Right.
Because it just didn't feel like it was a commentary on trilogies. It just felt like an odd part to have in a trilogy.
Right. And it kind of cheapens the impact of the first two movies. Particularly the first one, because again, as of now, this is like the first one is like the best one. So and just all the reveals we get in that first one, it's like, now that you've put it in my head that somehow Billy Loomis met Roman prior to all the events of the first Scream, I'm like,
yeah,
what? Anyway, so for my final thoughts, all I wrote down was, there's a reason this movie was glossed the hell over in Scream 4. They really don't reference this movie after this movie.
No, absolutely. I'm very glad that we got a Scream 4, because Scream 3 was just a really downer of a note to end on.
Right.
It's just disappointing. Right. And I agree with what you said. It's not outright bad. This is not a bad movie.
Right.
It was just disappointing.
Right.
It's just disappointing.
Right. Like, I mean, if you're watching this, like, if this was on TV and I was like cleaning my apartment, I'd pop it on.
It's a great background noise movie.
Right.
Totally.
But just overall, especially when you consider the quality of the first two, yeah, this one was just, it just made a lot of weird decisions, and it's no fault of I can't entirely fault the writing team on this one, because you came in to the third and final part of something that had been set up by completely different people. So there's that. But then that was kind of the end of it, until it wasn't. And then we get in 2011, we're going to jump right into it. We got Scream 4. Once again, directed by Wes Craven, with a screenplay by a returning Kevin Williamson. And
so happy he's back.
Yes. So let's run down the cast one last time. We've got our big three: Neve Campbell, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, joined by Emma Roberts, Hayden Panettiere, Rory Culkin, Marley Shelton, Anthony Anderson, Alison Brie, and of course, no Scream movie or property is complete without Roger L. Jackson as the voice of Ghostface. We also see Lucy Hale, Kristen Bell, and Anna Paquin in this movie, which is fun. So, the first thing
what a weird opening.
I actually really like the opening, because it was...
No, I love it. It's just so out there.
Just having, like, two false opens, it was just so fucking funny. The first thing I wrote was, oh yeah, that's more like it.
Yes.
I like this movie a lot.
I dig the hell out of this movie. This movie is so fun.
Yeah.
It's so wild. And yeah, what a great return to form.
Yeah.
To have this new decade, new rules idea be the overall theme here is really great. And what a wonderful way to really bring people, new fans into this, and new horror fans into this, and old horror fans. We get to watch the growth of what horror has become, and what that means, and the nature of internet fame is commented on this, which is wildly prescient for a 2011 movie to make this sort of commentary on internet fame.
Right.
Is so wild.
Yeah.
And
because even that, like, I would say, like, around that, like, around the start of the 2010s is when we really first start to see, like, the rise of, like, influencers and, like, Vine stars and things like that. So and, like, YouTube, like, viral videos and things like that. So yeah, just that was, like, the start of it all. So yeah, this movie really was really ahead of its time, which is weird to think about because we lived through that time. Yeah, this one.
But I think that's way more so a commentary on how fast things happen on the internet than it is how old we are. Because, like, it's it's nuts how crazy, how fast things change on the internet.
Yeah. And this movie does, like we mentioned, almost completely glosses over the third movie. It focuses a lot on the original, which I think was the right move.
The right move, the way to go.
Right. And yeah, I loved seeing, I love that Gail gets a little bit more of a story here about, she's kind of struggling with kind of being a small town wife. While Deputy Dewey's off, he's not deputy, he's a sheriff in this one now. The kills in this were, they reference movies like the Saw movies in this, which, Saw, Hostel, those really kind of up the ante during this time in terms of on-screen kills. So I think this one...
Well, the torture porn era of horror is an era. I'm glad we're past it.
Yeah.
I love the Saw movies, not because they are torture porn, but because they're just bonkers.
Well,
like they really are.
I'm excited to rewatch the first
really
one.
Bafflingly bonkers films.
Right.
But yeah, the entire era of torture porn being the focus of what horror was,
right,
is, it's fine if you like that sort of thing, I guess, if you like just watching horror for the sake of gore.
Right.
Because that's really all it is. It's gross out horror.
Right.
And that's never been my brand of horror. I can appreciate it for what it is, but gross out horror is not horror. It's just making you go, ugh. It's just gross. And I want something to make me feel tense. I want that roller coaster clicking feeling,
right,
when I watch a horror movie. And you just don't get that when you're just watching somebody peel somebody's fingernail off. Like, that's not scary. It's just gross.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I appreciate that, like, this movie stayed true to, like, the slasher, but also kind of added elements of, like, oh, well, I'm making this movie and I'm filming everyone die in real time. So I thought that was an interesting way to go.
What a brilliant motivation to give our killer this time around. Just the pure. This is one of those times where I'm perfectly okay with the killer's familial relation to Sydney, because I think they made it work really nicely. That she's her cousin, and she, they have a strained relationship, but you don't need to mention your cousins in previous films, and we introduce her as her cousin from the beginning, and so when it's revealed that it's her, and we hear her motivation of, I just want to be like you, I want to be famous, and this is the easiest way to do it.
Right.
To be internet famous is to just copy you. That's really cool. That the killer is not copycatting the killer; she's copycatting the survivor by being the killer. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Hang on, John. Give me 1 second. I need to get my charger for my laptop. So,
go right ahead.
I want to let you finish your brilliant point, though. There we go. All right, we're back, baby. No, that's what you just said. Everything you just said was 10,000% on the money. Like, yeah, this is genuinely a good movie. This is probably if I had to like rank them, I'd put like Scream and then Scream 4.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is just a genuinely just a good, fun movie that is still a sequel, but also kind of plays with those remake, reboot rules.
Mm-hmm.
And Yeah, the kill. Going back to the kills a little bit, just the. What was so interesting is that I think this is the only one. No, Scream 3 and 4 were the only ones that Kendra watched with me the full way through. She jumped straight in on Scream 3, and I was like, oh, bless your heart.
Welcome.
Yeah, but then we watched Scream 4, and like opening scene was wild, but particularly the kill with Allison Brie in the movie was like that shit was scary because I'm like, even I did a show in Tampa, and the building that we parked in was much like that. It was a parking garage, and like, especially when you got a rehearsal late at night, you're the only one walking back to your car. It can be kind of spooky. So like the idea of walking back by yourself and there's someone kind of looking at you. But when he stabs her to kill her, like his mask is just pressed up against her face, and I'm like, we were just like watching it, like, what an intimate way to kill someone. Yeah. And then he throws her off the fucking building, which was like during a press conference. He throws the press during a press conference. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That was wild. Anthony Anderson getting stabbed in the fucking head.
Oh my God. Yeah. I forgot that moment happened. I only watched this movie once before in theaters back in 2011.
Yeah, same.
And so I'm really upset with myself that I've not revisited it sooner because this movie's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so good. But yeah, I'd completely forgotten that Anthony Anderson dies that way.
Yeah.
Like I remembered that only the original 3 basically make it out of this movie alive,
right,
which is a little disappointing, but we can get into that when we start talking about things that bummed us out.
Right.
But yeah, that kill was just so brutal. It's so just out of nowhere brutal.
It's like such a simple way to kill someone, but like just the fact that the camera stays on him when like he's like the blood is just actively gushing and he's like losing his sight, and like I was like, what? Something about seeing someone stabbed in their forehead, like through their skull, was just so like, oh my God. I completely forgot in Scream 3 the moment where Dewey runs out of bullets and the killer throws the knife and it hits him butt first and knocks him out. Sorry. I must have actively blocked that out of my brain because I couldn't stop laughing. I fucking hated that moment. Sorry.
What a dumb movie.
Someone out there loves that movie more than anything else, so I apologize to that person.
I know.
But anyway, going back to Scream 4. Sorry, I just had to get that out of my head again. The fucking when they call Emma Roberts and Hayden Panettiere while their friend is across the street and they're watching her get killed.
Mm-hmm.
And just sliced open. Yeah. This movie was very creative, and it was very interesting, and just overall a fun just way to re-enter the franchise. The Charlie revealed played by Rory Culkin was genuinely crazy to me, at least.
Yeah, that was wild. And again, and I think that's my biggest disappointment with this movie, is that we set up some really interesting characters that I would have loved for them to be part of the new generation moving forward. And then all of them are dead at the end of the movie. Like I would love to see Hayden Panettiere's character in this new one coming out. Like I would have loved that. Her character was so fun. Mm-hmm. She was so great in this.
Yeah.
And then they just kill everybody. And that's so disappointing.
Yeah. And maybe that was because they knew that, or at least at the time they thought like, okay, this is going to be our real like finale. Like this is our encore, and this is going to be like we weren't happy with the third one, so let's make a fourth. Let's make this the thing.
So yeah, the studios originally wanted a new trilogy out of this. Like if it did well enough, the they wanted to create a brand new trilogy, and so now unfortunately Wes Craven passed away a few years after this.
Right.
This was his last film. A great way to go out for him. This is super fun. But so I don't know if this fifth one is going to ultimately lead in, especially because the Weinstein Company shuttered its doors,
right?
And they were the main distributor and producer for these films. And so Spyglass, I think, has the rights to the franchise now. So we'll see if it does well enough and to give us a sixth one, and we'll see if people are even still interested. From what I've seen, the new one is getting some pretty rave early reviews, so that's a great sign. But yeah, the fourth one was meant to just sort of be a re-entry point and leave it open to the possibility of newer ones,
right? But
we'll see. Which is wild. The original ending to this movie. The movie originally ended. I don't know if you read about this or saw this, but the movie was supposed to end with our killer, Sydney's cousin, getting wheeled out on a stretcher to the ambulance, and she's telling the press, "Please, no, I just want to be left alone." But they keep taking photos of her, and she's loving every second of it. And the movie's supposed to end right after you hear somebody in the house say, "Hey, we've got a live one here. One of these women, we've got a live woman here. She's alive." And that's when the movie was supposed to cut out. And so you're not even sure if it's Sydney who lived or if it's Hayden Panettiere's character.
Right.
We don't know. And so she would then kind of lead into being the bad guy, the anti-hero kind of situation of her going into the next movie. And so we would follow her journey as a killer. But then they decided to add in the hospital sequence at the end and kill her off.
Right.
Which I'm on the fence about how I feel about that. Because on the one hand, I do love the idea of the legacy, the new characters living onto the next one. I think that that's really interesting. But on the other hand, I don't know. There's just something about the Scream movies that you have the killers die at the end. There's just we follow new people and a new ghost face every time. So it would have been interesting to see a movie where who Ghostface is going into the movie.
Right.
I think that would have been an odd situation.
Yeah, I feel like at that point you kind of get into like Pretty Little Liars, kind of territory. Which I mean, it's not a dig, I mean, that could have been interesting. And then I think they tried something with that. I have not. I'll be honest. I have not watched the Scream series.
I watched the first season. I liked it. I dug it. I should probably get back into it. I thought it was an interesting way to go.
Right.
They didn't use the reason why I think I dropped off was because ultimately I watched the first season. You see the reveal and you go with it, but they never used like Ghostface as the iconic killer. It was there's no Ghostface. It's just a guy in a mask.
Right. Now, I did read a little bit about it. I didn't read any like the actual story details, but I do see that in the third season, I think they've only made 3 seasons, and I think it got canceled. But in the third season, Roger L. Jackson does return as the voice of Ghostface, which is interesting. But anywho, yeah, I really, really enjoyed Hayden Panettiere's character, especially because like it would have been interesting to see. That's all fascinating. I didn't realize that about the movie's original ending. But it would have been cool to see, her character go from kind of a supporting character to a lead. Yeah, that would, because I mean, also I haven't, unless I think she may be on some like CMT show, but I haven't seen a whole lot of Hayden Panettiere, and I mean, she's especially in this movie, she's fantastic. So,
She was doing a show called Nashville for
Gotcha.
a couple seasons. And that ended back in 2018, 2019. So at this point, looking at her IMDb, she doesn't have anything lined up, but I imagine that's just because she's probably trying to, live her own life and do her thing, especially with the way the world is currently. I don't know that you really want to be diving into new projects if you can avoid it.
I mean, and also she's been acting since she was a literal child, so like she's earned her break.
Yeah.
She's had a great career. But I just, selfishly speaking, I thought she was fantastic in this movie, and it got me wondering why we haven't really seen her in the last few years.
Totally.
Anyway, that's besides the point. I like what this movie did, especially I didn't realize any of that this movie was attempting to possibly set up a new trilogy. Because I mean, obviously, it didn't do that. But I mean, I dug the hospital sequence at the end there. It kind of gave me some Halloween 2 vibes.
Sure.
I mean, the most I know about Halloween 2, because again, I did not watch the whole thing, was that I know it takes place in a hospital, which is a great setting, a fantastic setting for a horror movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought I liked the Emma Roberts reveal. I thought it was a solid familial motivation, like you mentioned. I really, really like this movie. And I didn't mind that it didn't go on from there. Like if that had been the last Scream movie, I think I would have been pretty happy with it. Especially because they played a lot with the remake aspect. Now, something.
Yeah, oh, and no, it's fine. I really enjoyed the line that they threw in at the end there, where she says, "Don't fuck with the original."
So good,
and I think that's a really solid way to end. If it was going to be the end, to end this new chapter on a commentary on reboots, because don't fuck with the original. Like, just leave it alone, and it's fine. I thought that would have been really smart and really interesting.
Right. So I think we're both kind of on the same page in terms of ghost faces. In terms of enjoyment, just pure enjoyment, I would give this probably 4.5 ghost faces.
I'm sticking with 4. I think 4 out of 5 is a really fair, solid rating for this one, just on an overall scale.
Right. And as far as scares, I'd give this kind of middle of the road. I'd give it a 3. Because I don't know that I was necessarily as frightened as much as I was like just kind of intrigued. Of course, I still jumped. I still got scared. Don't get me wrong. But like, but in terms of like, as like, I didn't think it was like scary as much as it was just like, oh shit, what's going to happen next? It was very suspenseful, but not like frightening.
Yeah, very suspenseful. Little scare. Aside from the gore factor, I think this one had quite a bit more gore than the previous films. Yeah. Which, again, commentary on the state of horror at the time. Yeah, we have a lot more gore nowadays than we do, just like scares.
Right.
But yeah, I think I would agree that a 3.5 scare factor is fair enough. I don't know that we said anything about 3 or on a rating. I think we just we skipped right over it and went right into this one. Do you want to say anything about a rating for 3, or just continue to move past it?
I think I just want to move past it. Leave it in the past where it belongs.
All right.
But before,
which means that moving on to 5. Do we have? We'll do a whole other episode just on 5 after we catch it tomorrow. Do you have? What are your thoughts going into it? What are you thinking?
So, I rewatched I didn't watch the final trailer because I don't want to know too much about the movie, but I went back and watched the first trailer they released. And so there's this interesting trend I've been noticing in horror movies recently, where they're doing what's called a legacy sequel, where they will kind of make a sequel that is a direct like they're kind of retroactively erasing some, like for example, the biggest example right now is Halloween, where the new Halloween, which I have not seen, so I know we'll have to watch those at some point.
I love the new. Well, I love the first of the new Halloweens.
Fair enough. But I know this Halloween 2018 was a direct sequel to the original Halloween.
Yes.
So
they're doing the same thing on Netflix is doing the same thing with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
They're doing the new one is a direct sequel to the original, ignoring all other continuities.
Right. And I think they're doing something, or they're trying to do something similar with the Predator series and the Alien. Like, I mean, they've been trying to do stuff with those franchises for years. But but it's just a popular trend right now that more and more people are kind of jumping onto. So I'm very interested to see how Scream, because this is kind of Scream's version of that, you know, with the title just being Scream and not Scream 5. Or 5 Cream, as the internet dubbed it at one point. So I'm very interested to see how they tie in a legacy sequel to this franchise, because I remember reading an interview that Neve Campbell did, where she originally wasn't interested in returning to the franchise, but I think it felt enough. It felt enough like Scream, and felt meaningful and purposeful enough that she, you know, and because she returned, I'm assuming that kind of led the way for Courtney Cox and David Arquette to also return, and Officer Judy from part 4, yeah. So I saw her in the trailer, and yeah, I'm actually very excited for this one. I've been hearing lots of good things, and the trailer, it feels heavy. It feels like a heavier movie than anything we've seen.
I'm very optimistic. Going into it. I'm a huge fan of the directors, and by huge fan I mean I've seen one of their films. They're relatively new. They're relatively newcomers though. Like, they haven't done a whole lot. It's Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette.
What have they done?
Are co-producing. They are directing. They did Ready or Not is the big one that I've seen of theirs. If you've not seen it, it is a spectacular horror comedy. Very well done. So I'm hoping that they bring that tone into this, because they had a real nice balance of their dark comedy going into it. And I'm seeing here that Matt Olpin also did the first VHS film, which or he was one of the directors for that one, which is cool, because I like that one as well. I thought the first VHS was very interesting. But yeah, if we ever do a series on anthology horror, we'll definitely have to do VHS.
Yeah, sure.
It's very intriguing. It's very interesting.
But yeah, I'm super excited. Especially, I think there's a lot of room to play, and I like a lot of the actors in this. Jack Quaid from The Boys is in this. Melissa Barrera from In the Heights is in this. And when I rewatched the trailer, it sounds like, and again, I'm assuming they will subvert expectations here, but it sounds like the killer is actually going after people who were either related or connected to the original killers of the previous movies. So I'm like, that's fucking interesting. And
what an interest, and that would be, if true, like that's such an interesting way to make a commentary on legacy sequels and like legacy films, is by going after the legacy of the previous films. It's so interesting. I'm very interested. Normally, I was really scared for this movie when I first saw that it was going to be a January release. For anybody who's not deep in the know with movies and movie releases, typically January and February are what are called dump months, where studios will just release whatever they have to make whatever quick buck they can, but it's the stuff that they don't have a lot of confidence in.
Right.
It's the things that they're, yeah, sure, here, let's get it out.
Right. Now that has changed in the last
January,
few years.
February. It has changed a little bit.
Right.
January, February are typically those, and then August and September are the other two dump months of the year. Right. And so I was really worried that this was just going to be, oh no, like it's getting a January release. It's been delayed a couple times. The production schedule, like even just getting it made, was apparently kind of a pain. In what I was reading, so I was really worried about it. But I'm very excited with all these early reviews saying that no, this is a return to form. Right. This is a very exciting sequel. So
right. Yeah, I've been hearing nothing but good things about it so far. Which as long as I can watch a good movie, I'm happy with whatever.
Which I hope to show you can be horror as well. Horror is full of good movies. Yeah. There are so many wonderful movies in horror.
Right. But yeah, so that's
because.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this is no, you're fine. This is Scream. That was Scream. Big fan. Love this franchise. Before we go, because this is our inaugural episode, and just to continue to get your feel. For the genre, are there
a little taste for it?
Are there any movies? Because I know that my lovely girlfriend, I've been trying to also get her into horror. She's not big into horror movies, but she's been enjoying what I've been showing her. She's been having a great time. So, but she has told me many times, no matter what I say, that she is not going to watch The Exorcist. That's just on her absolutely will not watch list. Not that I'm encouraging that kind of behavior, because I think everybody should watch, give things a chance. Right. But do you have any movies that are maybe not on a just absolutely will not watch list, but any movies that you know of that are like, ooh, I don't know about that one as we head into this endeavor?
As it stands, I'm pretty open. I can understand the Exorcist thing only because, and this is not a dig at anyone who does. I grew up Catholic. I'm not like I'm not in practice. I'm not, anything like that. But
same here.
But I like grew up Catholic, so like things like that are just like, my initial reaction is just like, oh, I don't want to stay away from that one. This is because of a product of my environment. But I mean, as of right now, I'm pretty open to anything right now. I am interested in. I've really enjoyed kind of exploring, this franchise and like the genre within a genre or like a subgenre. And just kind of at some point finding space to like explore, horror within other things. Kind of like, we were talking a little bit about, upcoming releases and, how I know like Sam Raimi, famed horror director, is returning to superhero movies. Or how Morbius is kind of Sony's attempt at a horror superhero movie. So like kind of revisiting and like, maybe checking out, the Blade movies again at some point and seeing how like what we, I don't know, I'm interested in exploring not just the genre but how the genre is utilized in other categories. And and sometimes we have those like horror comedies like Shaun of the Dead. That could be, things like that. So I'm just, there's a lot of possibility with this type of podcast. And I think, finding those connective threads will help me kind of go back to the, the straight up, slashers and horrors and things like that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this was a lot of fun, man. I'm super excited about where we can go with this. And for what I, at least for me, what I am exposed to.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have an outlet to talk movies on, and this is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, pretty soon we'll have more details as to where you can actually find all of our chats here. On on various podcast networks. So
Absolutely.
so that was Scream 1 through 4. Check out the next episode in which we will be reviewing the 2022 film Scream.
Thank you, guys.
All right, y'all. Peace.